All right, Adam, it was signing day this week, and the Buffaloes, as far as we know, do not have a game as we're doing this, but it was a huge week for them with signing day, and always a huge week for you. I know that, and I know that it's a huge relief for you to get past signing day. So, first off, as we're doing this on Thursday morning, you have a little more rest today than you did yesterday.
Yeah, I'm excited to not have to produce 18 videos in 24 hours again for at least another year. So that'll be nice. But no,
Yeah,
it's always a fun day. It was strange this year. I mean, everything is strange this year, right? It just didn't have the same excitement that it normally does because usually I've seen a lot of these players in person, whether it's going to games or seeing them at CU camps, and you have a better feel. I feel like my analysis is better most years, and sometimes you're gonna make predictions, and sometimes you're gonna be right, sometimes you're gonna be wrong, but at least usually I have a better feel for it. And this year I just really didn't.
yeah, and really, it's a class that, in addition to that, I mean, I feel like there wasn't a whole lot of buzz for this class because it really lacks star power. I mean, it was not like last year's class where people got super excited about a Shad Clayton, and Jason Harris announces on national TV, and things. I know that was after December, but still, there was some excitement there, and I think Eric Olson, he's the one guy that he's a 4-star rating on another service that we won't name here. But as far as 24/7 sports goes, there's no 4-star guys in this class, and so it does lack some of that star power. Do you feel like that's part of it too? Is that maybe it lacks some buzz there?
No doubt. And I would say this staff recruiting 2022 is going to be a much better gauge in terms of what they're going to be going forward. I've mentioned this on our message board. This staff was put in such a horrible spot trying to put this recruiting class together. Brian, the recruiting process has gotten so accelerated that you're sending a bulk of your offers out to kids when they're playing their junior season. And so Carl Durrell takes over in late February, and he's got to prioritize. His first action has to be trying to keep that 2020 class together, building his staff, meeting with his new players. And then a week after he's able to do that, the pandemic hits, and they're not allowed to bring any recruits on campus. And so they're putting out offers, but in most cases, Brian, it was too late for them to get in the mix with a lot of these recruits that had already had a chance to cultivate a relationship with other coaching staffs by that point. You're talking late March, early April is when Carl Durrell and the staff were really able to get out a lot of offers. And again, that's just too late. And you also look at it, you're taking over a program where the head coach leaves in kind of an awkward situation. You've gone to one bowl game the last 13 years. And so not being able to bring anybody out on campus, it was just a wide variety of things that made it really difficult to put this class together. But yeah, I'd say going forward, if you're a Colorado fan, you want to see a little bit more of that star power going forward because, hey, Colorado's 4-1, maybe they're 5-1 after a bowl game, and you can at least have a little bit of momentum. They have about 200 offers out to recruits in the 2022 class. So they're now finally they're kind of in the same boat of other colleges. And yeah, the recruiting dead period's extended until the spring. We'll see what happens there now that there's a vaccine somewhat on the horizon. But I think you grade this staff differently with this coming recruiting class than what you did because it was just almost an impossible situation to be put in from a recruiting standpoint.
Yeah, and in addition to that, I think that the perception was that Durrell was not a flashy hire, and that the momentum CU got under Mel Tucker was all of a sudden halted. And recruits always want to see a winning team, right? And so you could see some tangible things with Mel Tucker during the 2019 season, but then he leaves. Recruits committed to CU without really seeing anything on the field, and so. And really, by the time CU was winning 4 games, most of this class was committed anyway.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
we're not seeing this class did not show the product of CU being a 4-1 team. That's where I agree with you that you'll see that more in 2022. Now, the difficult part is the dead period is still goes into April 15th, and so we'll see if that gets extended even more. So this is now spilling into a good chunk of that 2022 class. So we'll see how it extends there, but. All in all, all that considered, Adam, when I look at this class, and you're more of the expert than I am, I still look at it and say, I know Carl Durrell said this, but I agree with him. okay, they filled some needs here, and they really hit some depth in some spots that they needed it, such as in the defensive backfield. I think at inside linebacker they got a couple of spots they really needed. They had to get a quarterback, obviously, and we'll see if they get another one. But what did you feel like? I sort of feel like they filled some holes where they had some holes.
Yeah, I'm going to start with a couple guys that aren't the highest rated in this class. I really like what Coach Rod did. They only brought in 2 offensive linemen, but I love both of these offensive linemen on film. Edgar Amaya is just a straight up road grader from Alabama. He looks like a Coach Rod type of recruit. He's just out there mauling guys left and right and has a huge frame. Jackson Anderson from East Texas, same thing. He's not quite as big as Amaya, but he moves really good for his size. We love this video of him running a big man relay. That's something that they were talking about on CU's broadcast yesterday. Can move really well for his size. I remember our first Zoom meeting with Coach Rod, and he had mentioned something about I might take some tight ends and try to convert them into offensive linemen. And I heard a lot of panic from CU fans because for a long period there, that's what they were doing. And yeah, there was, a David Bakhtiari that developed into a really good player. But by and large, that strategy did not work out well. I remember when CU played Sacramento State during the Embry era, and Sacramento State had a couple guards that were huge and could move and pull. And why can't CU get these type of guys? And so I think that's what that Coach Rod, these guys that they brought in, that's what they are. They're big guys that you're not going to have to wait 3-4 years for them to be big enough to compete in the Pac-12. So again, these aren't the most highest rated guys, but I really like both offensive linemen in this class.
Yeah, I agree with you, and they're guys. It's interesting seeing coaches have different philosophies, because I think Tucker had the same thing, and I don't know if it's necessarily wrong when Mike McIntyre wants to take leaner guys and then bulk them up, because I think that works in some ways, but I think at the Pac-12 level maybe that doesn't work as well. And I think that as CU's gotten better, it's because they started getting guys that are naturally big, and I think that's where you get with Amaya and Anderson, is you got 2 guys that are naturally pretty big. Same thing with Tyus Martin on the defensive line. You might have to reshape that weight, but that's common for high school kids coming in. But he can already naturally carry 320 pounds. So I personally, for a Pac-12 school, like that philosophy better. Take guys that are already big, reshape the weight, and then go from there. So.
Yeah, from time to time with a tackle, you can do that a little bit more so. But I've talked to Drew Wilson, and he's been clear that he wants to do exactly what you said, have to mold a little bit of that baby fat, for lack of a better term. Then, it's like with an Aaron Hagler, you try to make him a 300-pounder, but if you're not a natural 300-pounder, you get to that weight and you're not going to move the same way that you did before. And there's nothing you can do as a strength coach to make somebody more athletic, right? You want to have the guys like a Casey Roddick that has a little bit of both.
Yeah, and I thought, you mentioned Aaron Hagler. I thought he maximized as much as he could out of his tools, but he was not a natural 300-pounder. What did he come in at, like 250, 260, something like that? And they tried to get him to 3, and that's when he kind of started to struggle. But you're right. I've talked to Drew Wilson as well. He would rather take what is Amaya? What's his size?
He's about 320.
Yeah, about 320. He would rather take that. Okay, let's break him down to 300 and then build up that extra 20 with muscle and not that baby fat. So I agree with you. I like that philosophy. So let's kind of talk about some of these other guys, the offensive line we like. Who do you feel like, there's not a whole lot of star power? Who's your star in this class?
Well, you got to start with Eric Olson. I'll go chalk there. There were programs across the country. I mean, he could have gone to any Power 5 program or gone to any Power 5 conference. He had offers in each of those Power 5 conferences. He could have gone to Notre Dame. Really smart kid. Could have gone to Stanford. This worked out to CU's advantage. That you just haven't heard this a lot with in-state kids lately, is that CU was his dream offer. And so when he got that offer, it was a pretty easy decision for him. It was really cool too. He drove up to Folsom Field to sign his letter of intent yesterday. He couldn't obviously meet with Colorado's coaches because of the dead period, but that's how much it means to him. And
Yeah.
He's the first tight end that's been one of the top 3 ranked recruits in a class for Colorado going back to 2001. That's as far as our data goes back. So on paper, this is the best tight end that CU has signed in this century. And I think he's going to have a chance to play early. I know Carl Durrell said he wants all these guys to come in with the mindset that they can play early, but Eric Olson was one of the guys that he did single out in the group. And one guy, Brian, that didn't sign yesterday that I really, really like in this class, and as I watched more film of him, just fell in love, is TJ Patu. He plays all over the field for La Habra High School in California. They project him as an inside linebacker. Right now he's about 210, 215, so he's going to have to develop a little bit, but he's just out there wrecking guys and is very athletic, very versatile, playing all over the field. So he's a guy that he says he's all in with the Buffs. So CU fans don't have to worry there. Ashton Logan, a punter, didn't sign yesterday as well. He says he's all on board. I think that was just because the signing day ceremonies got canceled for their schools. They decided they were going to wait. But Patu is another guy that I think is really underrated in this class.
Yeah, I like his film as well. With Olson, it's interesting though, Adam, because this in this state, tight end was huge. I mean, there was a lot of really good tight ends, and depending on where you look, Olson wasn't even the top-ranked tight end in the state. But the Buffs really like him. It's going to be interesting to see kind of how all those guys pan out. I think you guys mentioned it in one of your preview or signing day videos, but those guys might be compared to each other over a number of years, and we'll see. But I love Olson. I think that he's going to fit in really well here. I'm excited that Brady Russell has a couple more years. Those two guys could be an interesting combination, perhaps even next year. So, I like Olson as well. Let's go to quarterback because everybody always looks at the quarterback. Drew Carter from Tigard High School in Portland, and love his film. He's an interesting one though, with as much as he's been into basketball and loves basketball. How do you feel like he's going to kind of fit into this school here in this offense?
Well, if I was a college quarterbacks coach, I would exclusively recruit dual threat athletes. Quarterbacks. I think it just adds such a dimension to your offense that it's hard to game plan for, and they can just be back-breaking type of plays for the other team when you have a quarterback that the play breaks down and he can run 20, 30 yards downfield. And so Drew Carter, I think, could do that. He's a good athlete. From everything I've heard, and this is not just sources at CU, this is talking with Brandon Huffman, our national recruiting director, that had it been a normal spring evaluation period where coaches can go out and see quarterbacks throw, that Drew Carter would have been more heavily recruited. CU would have had a lot more competition for him had that been the case, because this is a guy that is a really good basketball player and had spent a lot of time on the AAU circuit. So he wasn't doing a lot of these Elite 11 camps that a lot of these quarterbacks do. So his exposure was a little different just because, again, he is such a good basketball player. So kind of a unique situation for him. And yeah, I like his potential. With any quarterback, you got to wait till they get on campus and see how they stack up, because there's been a lot of quarterbacks that have been hyped up that get on campus at CU and are just not that good. So we'll see. But you also like the fact that he's going to be an early enrollee because, again, he has been splitting time between sports, and they say he's going to do that at CU. I have a hard time believing that's actually going to be the case. But I think him being able to get in there and get a jump start just from a mental side of things will help him out in terms of his development.
So I want to ask you about that part of it, because we've seen guys come in here before and say that they want to play both sports. Vontae Chenault did that a couple years ago. I think it's one thing to say it. Drew Carter, sounds more serious than others we've seen. But at quarterback, man, that's a tough one. The last CU quarterback I remember that was so heavily into basketball was Shane Dillon, and he wound up leaving to go play basketball somewhere. So, I mean, is it realistic, Adam, do you feel, for a kid to at a Pac-12 school to be a quarterback and be committed to that? I mean, because you have to be committed at quarterback, right? Can you do that and play basketball?
No, you can't. And I don't want to be squashing a young man's dream. Davion Taylor had a hard enough time just getting a few track practices in to be able to compete in that, because you've got spring ball and you've got schedule conflicts. I don't see. Again, I'm not trying to stomp his dream, but there's no way, Brian. You can't do that, especially as a quarterback.
Yeah, we've seen, like, Charlie Ward did it, but that was like early 90s, right? And he was really good at it. I mean, that was a long time ago. That was back when I was in high school and college. So that was a long time ago. But, he did it. But you're right. I mean, especially the way they've had spring ball lately. I know they didn't have it this year, but there's been times that the Buffs basketball team is out in Vegas for the Pac-12 tournament when the Buffs are having their spring game or spring ball. So if you're the quarterback, are you going to be a guy off the bench playing in the Pac-12 tournament, or are you going to come be with your team and learning the offense? So yeah, we'll see what he does. I mean, hopefully that he can do what he wants to do. But as a quarterback, I like his ability, and we'll see what he does there. So let's go on to a couple other guys. Secondary, Adam, they really bolstered the secondary. What did you feel overall about that group?
Well, you got to start with Tristan Oliver. This is a guy that people were really excited about 2 years ago when he signed with the Buffs and had to go the junior college route to shore up his academics, and was able to do that. And while he's done that, he's put on some good weight. We don't have any new film of him, but he was a really personable guy. And so I think he's a guy that I do every year, these signing day picks where I pick different categories like most underrated, most versatile. And one of the categories is most ready to make an immediate impact. And so he would be a guy there that I would pick and think that he could come in and play right away.
Yeah, and such a unique story too. How often does a guy, come back 2 years later and he hasn't really lost a year of eligibility, right? I mean, he hasn't played a down of football yet, and redshirted in 2019, and then his junior college gets canceled this year, and with the pandemic, he doesn't lose a year, so he can still play 4 years. And I agree with you. As far as guys that are ready to make an impact right now, I would put him at the top. I'm really excited about him. Now, where he plays, I don't know. I love his frame. He would be a big safety, but I think that he's got the athleticism to do that. He could be a star. I think he's kind of a perfect star based on what we've seen the Buffs do there. So it'll be interesting to see where he plays. But I agree with you. I think he's on the field in 2021.
And Coach Meat brought in a couple DBs from California. There are differing styles. You have Kalen Moore from Oaks Christian, second year in a row that they've plucked a kid from that program, one of the top programs in California. He's got a little bit more length and size. And then you've got Nico Reed, also from California, more of kind of a smaller, shiftier, versatile athlete type in there. And it was interesting. Tyron Taylor from North Carolina. I can't remember the last time CU signed somebody from that state. He's going to be an early enrollee. There's a connection there with Coach Meat and his trainer. That's why they found out about him. So we'll see. None of those guys are popping off the page in terms of other scholarship offers. So we'll see. But I would say of that group, Kalen Moore, I probably like the best just because of his size.
Yeah. And then, as far as guys playing early, let's go there, because Coach Terrell mentioned, a couple times yesterday, we brought in guys that we feel can help us right away. So obviously not all these guys are going to. We're seeing this year that even in a year where eligibility doesn't count, there's a number of true freshmen that aren't getting on the field just because they're not quite ready. Aside from, I know Treston's not a true freshman, but aside from him, Adam, who do you see kind of right now, and it's always tough to project, but who do you see right now maybe being on the field and helping this team in 2021?
Well, sticking with the secondary, I'm remiss, I should have brought his name up earlier, is Trevor Woods coming in as a safety from Texas. You turn on his film and it's just like pick six after pick six after pick six. I don't know how high his ceiling is, but I know his floor is pretty high. Like, he's going to come in, I think, and be a pretty darn good player from day one. And you just see how productive he was playing 6A football in Texas. He's got the size already, and you're going to need help on the back end. Depth at safety has been an issue for this program for a little while now. And so he's a guy that I can see stepping in and being ready to go as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. He's one of my favorite guys in this class. And, he was hitting over 500 in baseball before that season was canceled this spring. So he's a pretty good athlete all around. I love watching this film. I think he's a playmaker, like you said, pick six after pick six. I mean, watching those plays, the way he reads plays is pretty impressive. And then he's got, I mean, one of those pick sixes, it's not like he's picking it at the 10 and jogging in. One of them was 100-yard. It was like 100 or 99-yard pick six. And he didn't get caught from behind. So you got to like the skill set there. I love his size, his skills, everything. I think he's one of the better players in this class. And, I don't know if he's the most underrated or not, but I think he's one of the better players in this class. So I would say, that's two DBs we got there that could potentially play next year. Anybody else you see maybe getting on the field?
Yeah, well, I think when you talk about early impact guys, you're looking at guys that have college-ready frames. And Zephaniah Mejia from Vegas area. I think he's a guy, he's 6'1", 230 already. Again, another physical guy at linebacker. And inside linebacker, that's another spot. You're assuming that Nate Landman is going pro, and there's some big question marks at that position going forward. And so you're going to have a wide open competition there. And again, you wonder, again, how much upside he has, but again, he has that college ready frame to come in and be part of the mix, I would think, pretty early on.
Yeah, and Tyson Summers already is throwing out comparisons to Nate Landman with him, so that's pretty high praise there. I think we both agree that Eric Olson can also come in and maybe make an impact right away as well. Another one that I know we don't like, I wouldn't say we don't talk about kickers very often, but Cole Becker comes in. Evan Price is doing a really good job, I think, but would the Buffs defer to the scholarship kicker in that regard? That's going to be an interesting one to see what they do there.
Well, you wouldn't bring in a scholarship kicker if you didn't want a little something more out of that position. Again, Evan Price has been very consistent, but we've even kind of heard that, just in terms of how operational he is in terms of kicking maybe not as high as you want and having the strongest leg, I don't think you're going to trot him out there for 50 plus field goals. And so, yeah, you're not, again, scholarship numbers are going to be pretty crunched here because there's going to be this backlog going forward. And so you're not going to sign a kicker this year if you don't think that he's going to be your guy, I think, going forward. And Cole Becker was committed to Iowa State, which is obviously having a great season, and they were able to flip him after they lost to recruit Josh Bryan that flipped from CU to Notre Dame here recently.
Yeah, so that'll be interesting with the kicker situation. Those Price brothers, they've done a pretty good job, both walking on, Davis and Evan, but they've always had that scholarship kicker they've had to battle with, and so Evan's gonna have to do that next year as well. Want to ask you one other thing, Adam, about there's two receivers, both in state, and it's unusual because we often see, Chev goes out to Texas and California and gets receivers. Both these kids are from in state, Chase Penry and Ty Robinson. What are your thoughts on those guys, and is that a position where those guys can play right away, or are the Buffs just too deep there?
Yeah, I mean, Chev, you mentioned, likes to go out to Texas and get those guys. He couldn't go out to Texas this year, right? So he kind of fell back on familiarity with those guys. And they already had Chase Penry committed back when Mel Tucker was here. Chev, he's told Chase Penry that Chase reminds him of himself at that age, being, I think he's going to probably fit in as a slot receiver. And he's rated pretty highly in this class. He's their third highest rated guy in terms of the signees from yesterday. But I still think that maybe he's been kind of overlooked a little bit just because he's been committed for so long. Back-to-back state championships, obviously, and a pretty well-rounded player. Ty Robinson is a guy that you're probably going to develop a little bit. He has been, big-time basketball player as well, had an offer from Minnesota, 6'4", 190. You can't coach 40-inch vertical. And so some of the tools that he has that I know Chev is going to enjoy molding him into being a top-level receiver as he gets a chance to just focus on football. But, yeah, speaking of backlog in terms of talent at least, it's going to be hard for any receiver to get on the field early because we've seen what Brandon Rice has done this year. Montana Lamonius Craig has gotten in there. Levante Chenault has a really bright future. And I think the only guy they probably lose out of that mix is Katie Nixon, right? So it's going to be tough. Dimitri Stanley's got, some more years of eligibility left. So I think those guys can come in and develop a little bit.
It will be interesting to see what happens, if anybody transfers out. Carl Durrell this week, he said, hey, I'm not naive to think that that's not going to happen with our program. It already happened with Tyler Lytle. It'll be interesting to see if a guy like Maurice Bell, Daniel Arias, with them not getting on the field as much as maybe they wanted. They're now both being passed up by some younger guys. Do they move on? So it'll be interesting to see if there's some time there. But I do think, Chase Penry looks more college ready at this point as far as how he runs routes and just kind of, his polished skills as a receiver. I think they're a little bit better than Ty right now. But I think there's a great upside in Robinson. So it's an interesting duo there. But I think one that we could see more of an impact maybe 2-3 years down the road.
Yeah, and a couple other notes from Carl Durrell's presser yesterday. First off, you're not going to expect them to sign many JUCO guys as long as Carl Durrell's the head coach. He addressed that and said, and it makes a lot of sense. And I'll use Javier Edwards as an example. You bring him in from the junior college ranks, and he struggles as a junior. You finally get him ready to be a productive Pac-12 player as a senior, and then his eligibility is up. And so Carl Durrell said, "Hey, I'd rather have that development happen when these guys are coming in from high school for a couple of years, and then they can be really, really good players as a junior and senior." And so I like that philosophy. I think every once in a while you might have to pull in a JUCO guy if you have, attrition issues at a certain position or injury issues at a certain position. You don't have great depth and you need to plug a guy in there. But it's just tough when you get these guys in, you develop them, and then their eligibility is up.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that hurt Mike McIntyre at the end of his tenure was he was relying so much on JUCO guys, especially on defense, that sometimes they pan out. Mustafa Johnson has been absolutely phenomenal for this team, and so certainly you can't discount JUCO guys just making that blanket statement because they work out sometimes. But there's a lot of misses there as well, especially in the defensive backfield with what they have there. Mekhi Blackman has done a good job as well, but I think Mac relied on that a little bit too much towards the end, and so I like Durrell's philosophy. And the one guy they did get, Trustin Oliver, he's not that way because, like we mentioned, he's got 4 years left, so you can still develop him even if he's not ready this year, which we think he would be. Even if he's not, you develop him this year, and you still got 3 years with him. So he fits right in. He's almost like a high school kid coming in. So it'll be interesting to see how often Durrell goes to that well. One last thing I want to ask you, Adam, before we get out of here. Drew Carter is the one quarterback. Durrell mentioned they're still short on quarterbacks, and with Tyler Lytle leaving, they've only got 3 scholarship guys for next year. 2 of them haven't ever taken a snap in college. One of them's not even on campus yet. Do you think the Buffs go the JUCO route, the grad transfer route, high school route? Did they find another quarterback?
I think they're probably still trying to figure out which route they want to go there. But I think reading between the lines, they're definitely planning to add a quarterback because, like you kind of alluded to there, Carl Durrell said you'd like to have 4 to 5 scholarship quarterbacks, and right now we have 3, and we're going to kind of dissect this. Clay Millen was committed to Arizona, and he was down to see you in Arizona. He did not sign with the Wildcats. Obviously, they're going through a coaching transition right now. We'll have to see if Noel Mazzoni is not retained there as the offense coordinator. I could see him going somewhere else. And again, Colorado was his backup plan there. So it might be a high school guy, but I think they're still kind of trying to figure that out.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because a lot of times you'll hear, high school guys don't like it if there's another quarterback committed, but we've seen a number of schools that, Arizona State, I think, was it last year or 2 years ago when Jaden Daniels came in? I think he was one of 3 or 4 quarterbacks in their class, and Arizona's had a couple each year for a number of years, so it's not unusual. I think the Buffs need to do that. I would kind of like to see them get a veteran to compete with Sam and just give him that experience, but based on Durrell's philosophy, who knows if he'll do that or not. But I would expect them to add another quarterback. And the other thing it'll be interesting to see is if there's any attrition at running back and if they were to add somebody in February. But we can get to that another time.
All right, yeah, and quarterbacks, Brian, are going to have to compete anywhere. And again, it's not like CU has like 6 scholarship quarterbacks. They might add a quarterback because they need depth at that position. So that shouldn't, and Drew Carter's already signed. That shouldn't concern him because, again, no matter where he goes, Boise State was his other option that he was down to, and he would have to compete there too.
Yeah. So hopefully these guys, you want guys that want competition. They're not afraid of it, and that they're willing to come in and compete for that job and think they can get it. So we'll see what happens with that position. But Adam, I think that'll do it for our signing day wrap up, and we'll be back at some point, we think, to talk about another opponent. Who knows if it'll be this week or a bowl game, but we'll be back at some point to talk about an opponent here soon.